This report strengthens our scientific understanding for sure of where the climate system is heading. It's warming quite strongly. And one thing that wasn't mentioned in that lead-in was that with the various scenarios for how much the world might emit into the future, we're actually tracking on the uppermost of those scenarios. So if we keep burning fossil fuels at the rate we are now, we're heading for the upper end of the projections, the upper end of the sea level rise projections, the upper end of the temperature projections. So we're on track for something around 80 centimeters or 90 centimeters of sea level rise by 2100, or 4 degrees temperature rise, if we do not get off that high emission scenario and onto something lower. I think it's also quite significant that it is virtually certain, we really understand well that this is a human-driven problem. This isn't natural variability. So all of the things that we've been saying have been strengthened by this latest report.
Okay, the report concludes there's a 95% chance that man-made activity is causing global warming. Well, Stefan, do you expect skeptics will seize on that 5% chance that the scientific community has got it wrong?
No, look, to be absolutely accurate on that, the IPCC used very carefully defined terminology. They used the term extremely likely. It's a minimum 95% up to 100%. So it's in the bracket of 95 to 100% certainty. I think that's about as close as you're ever going to get to consensus on these complex scientific problems. I think there's absolutely little room for doubt, no room for doubt, in fact, on the fact that we have a human-driven problem here and we've got to get on top of it.
Well, the report has been attempting to come to grips with the apparent conundrum that the increase in global temperatures has been more gradual than predicted. How have they been able to explain that apparent contradiction?
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty clear-cut. The first thing I want to say is that slowdown is only in global surface air temperature. That represents only 3% of the additional heat that's being trapped by greenhouse gases. Over 90% goes into the ocean. The ocean has continued to warm and continued to warm strongly. There's no slowdown. Ice is melting at a more rapid rate over the last 2 decades. Sea level is rising at an increased rate over the last 2 decades. When you look at the weight of evidence, there is absolutely no pause in global warming. It's continuing unabated. Because the atmosphere only absorbs 3%, it's subject to more variability than those other components of the system. There is little doubt that we'll see periods of slow warming and periods of very rapid warming in the atmosphere. That's the way the system works. But looking at the totality of evidence, there is absolutely no evidence for the fact that global warming has slowed down.
And obviously a lot of scientific rigour has been applied here. There's no suggestion then, Will Stefan, that the planet is perhaps more sophisticated than we originally thought it was, and has sophisticated self-correction measures that could perhaps be helping to mitigate against global warming?
Look, the system has a lot of feedbacks in it, both ones that dampen the warming and ones that feed the warming. And they operate on different timescales and in different parts of the system. We're understanding these better and better. For example, oceans and land absorb about half of the CO2. That's a dampening mechanism. But the fact that increasing temperature puts more water vapor in the atmosphere, which is a greenhouse gas, strengthens warming. We understand these. They're in the models. So the models actually incorporate these dampening and reinforcing mechanisms. And that's why we have confidence over these longer multi-decadal periods that we understand how the system is behaving and we can project how it's going to behave in the future.
But at the end of the day, do we just have a fundamental problem with this issue, Will Stefan, that no matter how many reports we have released coming out from the scientific community, the majority of the scientific community indicating that this is a real problem, that at the end of the day, it's a problem that's simply too hard for humankind to come to grips with and deal with?
Well, look, I think that's a very pessimistic outlook. Humans have been innovative. We've been creative all throughout our history. If we weren't, we'd still be using stone tools in caves. We aren't. We advance. We learn things. We innovate. We already have a lot of the solutions to this problem. We have clean energy systems. They're being rolled out now in many parts of the world. Countries are using various policies to drive emissions down. So one could argue that we're at the beginning of a big transformation toward a much cleaner energy future. Obviously, we have a lot more to do, and that's what this report highlights. But by no means is it a pessimistic future. It only is if we throw up our hands and say, we've got to keep doing what we've always done. That's not a very smart thing for humanity to do, and in fact, that's never what we've done in the past. So it's time to get our innovation pants on, our science going, our creative policy tools, and get on with the job.